Welcome to the spot. It's time to ignite. Oh yeah. Operation Hangout. The feeling's just right. Chilling with the crew. We're ready to groove. Opinions flying high. Come on, let's move. Hang out all night long, all night. Laughing and debating, playing our song. Oh yeah. Share your thoughts, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Operation Hangout, let's reach for the sky. Let's fly. Pull up a chair, let's get in the zone. Voices blending smooth like a funky trombone. Oh yeah. Topics from the heart, making us think. With a twist and a shout, raise up your drink. Cheers. Hang out all night long, all night. Laughing and debating, playing our song. Oh yeah. Share your thoughts, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Operation Hangout, let's reach for the sky. Let's fly. Bring it down, shake it up, feel the beat. With every word we share, the circle's complete. Living loud, think the proud, that's what we do. Oh yeah. Join the club, come on through, we're waiting for you. Alright. Hang out all night long, all night. Laughing and debating, playing our song. Oh yeah. Share your thoughts, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Operation Hangout, let's reach for the sky. Let's fly. Hang out.
What is going on, everybody? We're back at it once again at the best place you can be at a Saturday night. Of course, I'm calling it Spartan Institute Network. This is Operation Hangout. So, Jonny Quest. I wonder what the guys have to say. So, let's get him in here. Of course, we're talking about my little friend. Hello.
Hey, what's going on? What's going on?
So,
how's everybody doing?
let me ask you a question, my man.
Go ahead.
Jonny Quest. What's the first thing come to your mind?
Oh, Jonny Quest. The first time I watched Jonny Quest was back in the Cartoon Network series back in the day. But before I was on Cartoon Network, I believe it used to be on the USA Network at one point. I can't remember.
I don't remember that part.
Watching about was it six? 1, 2, 3, 4 different views of production that Jonny Quest went through from the time he was little to the time he was a teenager, so to speak. It was one of my favorite cartoons / anime because there was a cross in between what either you could conclude to be cartoon or anime because its production was looking more close on an anime side of things than that of a cartoon side of things. That's just me. But I would tell you this though, Jonny Quest is no joke. It was a go-to show to watch late night. If they're doing a Jonny Quest marathon, it's hard not to fall asleep.
It's hard not to fall asleep, Sid?
Hard not to fall asleep watching.
Why you say that?
No, because their adventure is more intriguing. There's a lot of science in play, a lot of history in play, a lot of mystery in play. It was more like a hype-up version of Scooby Doo, and no type of mysteries, but there's a different type of. There's more adventures, there's more action packed, with more a little comedy here and there, but it gives that intrigue like a young version of Indiana Jones kind of thing going
Mhm.
on. It had that look with
Oh
it,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it was
definitely
very
had a
interesting.
feel for it. Absolutely, I can't deny that. I enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed more the real adventure of Johnny Quest more. That was more my scene versus Johnny Quest when it first came out.
Mm. So right now, when you ask me about this show, I'm like, how much memory lane I gotta pick up?
A lot.
Because believe me, I watched Johnny Quest so much to the point where I thought I missed certain episodes.
I can see that. What about which one do you prefer? The Real Quest, the Real Adventure Johnny Quest, or Johnny Quest?
Um, and that's too unfair.
Well, I'm usually unfair.
That's so unfair. I know you are usually unfair, but this one kind of like, how can you say you don't like either one? But the Will Adventure of Johnny Quest gave it more a mature feel.
Oh,
Like,
they were a lot older too in that series. Let's be honest here, dude.
so right now, I decided let me go a little rundown. Let me do a history research on this. I didn't know Johnny Quest started back in 1964,
Oh, is it that
1965.
old? Really? Shit.
That's just right there, like let you know, like, and remember, it was under one company, Hanna Barbera.
That's right. That's right. They were under one brand of the whole series. You know what? I'm surprised they haven't come back anytime soon. How you know all these reboots have been coming out lately? I haven't seen anything with Johnny Quest coming
No,
out.
here's the joke. As I look into it, right, they say legacy. Johnny Quest paved the way for more mature animated series. Now, the reboot they had two. The reboot they had is the New Adventure of Johnny Quest. That was 1986. Then the other reboot they had the Real Adventure of Johnny Quest, because that was 1996.
And that's the 3D version, right?
So guess what? This is an old classic that had two reboots. Two in two different decades. One in 1986, one in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
That just let you know that okay, I didn't realize it was a reboot anyway. Then I look it up though. I'm like, wait, hold on. You watching a classic being remastered, reborn for a more mature. Remember, I said it had a more mature feel.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny Quest. So you can imagine. Plus, let's be real though. Of all the show that came out in the 80s, in the 90s, even though this one from 1964, Johnny Quest had that feel whereby you able to see different locations, different venues, different scenery because they're always on a different adventure around the globe.
That remind me of a little bit of oh man, what was her name? Where in the world is Carmen San Diego?
Carmen San Diego. Carmen San Diego is more at a geography, history, testing your brain and your metal if you know certain things. Johnny Quest was more deeper into the mystery that people have been speaking of but never able to find a clue about it. They were giving that feel like, okay, don't you care about what behind this mystery? Why everybody is spook about this? Why there's a for your own safety, don't go past
Mhm.
this kind of feel? That what Johnny Quest was. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. It was like an animated James Bond.
But wait! I got a
It
little
was like,
pushback on that. I got pushback on that.
oh boy, oh boy,
Okay,
oh
let's see
boy. You
how
sure
well
do.
do you old farts remember James Bond Jr.
I never came across that, to be honest.
You've reached your limit on talking. Shut the fuck up.
You don't remember James Bond Jr.? Eric, help me out here, buddy. You're my
I never came across no, I never came across that. Maybe you saw that in
no,
Greek,
it was American.
but out here in the
I'm
what year?
looking it up right now. Give me a second. No,
I'm being dead serious. I watch a lot of James Bond movie, but never came across any James Bond Jr. kind of thing. Never did. Unless it was on cable, which I don't know. Cause it was on WPIX
I
11.
don't remember what,
It
but I
it
remember
was
watching it
it was
actually.
it
I watched
was on
the
Fox 5.
remakes, not remakes, reruns. Here we go.
See?
Came out
Because
in
even Eric,
19. Hang on,
even Eric,
shut the fuck
even,
up, big Groot. It came out in 1991.
on what channel?
Doesn't tell me here. Hang on, I'm still going through the information.
That's why, and that's why I'm trying to point out. I mentioned all the channels that they show cartoon back in the 80s and the 90s. WPIX 11 is one. Fox 5 is 2. ABC channel 7 is 3. CBS is channel 4, and NBC is channel. That's CBS and NBC was on Saturday at well channel 7. On weekdays is WPIX 11 and Fox 5. That's for local channel. As for cable, US Network and Cartoon Network that I can remember. But I never come across that particular cartoon. Hey, little boy, how you doing? So, as you trying to criticize me, I'm trying to remember what network were they being broadcast on. Unless for some reason it was on the HBO side of it. No, I never came across that. Dead serious.
I'm surprised Eric hasn't made a comment yet because he usually is dead on with this right now.
And Eric said vaguely. You mean that he wasn't aware? I would.
It wasn't a long series. It was like here, let me see how many seasons they had. There was like um
Hmm.
my brain's having a brain fart tonight. Series.
See, that's my point. That thing never popped up. Remember, in the U.S., it's always a jurisdiction, either it's broadcast on the East Coast, Central, or West Coast. There were cartoons that were broadcast on the West Coast side of things, but never reached on the East Coast side of things, and vice versa. So you need to be aware of that. And sometimes some of these cartoons you're not able to show on local channel, we're able to show on cable. But what cable channel are you referring to?
So these are the episode guideline. I can see. Hang on. I think it was only one season. It looks like.
It looked like it was one season, but what channel? That's the question.
I can't find it. My brain just is not cooperating with me today. So bear with me.
And the thing is, I can remember Jonny Quest more than
No,
James Bond
my
Jr.
only reason I brought that up because you said he's like, Jonny Quest was a little bit like James Bond. You know what I'm saying? That's the only reason why
You know,
I popped my little.
yeah, and I'm glad you bring it up. But that's a funny thing. Imagine so much cartoon are being produced in the 80s and the 90s. Not everybody has seen everything. I remember one Facebook page would blow up. Do you remember this? Do you remember that? And I saw a list of cartoons. I'm like, hold up. I heard of it, but never seen it. Some cartoon was aired in Canada, not in the US. Some was aired in the West Coast, not in the East Coast. So there's like a politic being played on where you can broadcast certain cartoons.
Absolutely, bro.
So that's what's going on.
That's been a thing going on for years.
You telling me?
Like I can't remember the last time there was. Oh God, a non-war of cartoons. Actually,
Well,
that's a
Hanna
good show.
Barbera
That's a
was
good
one
title
of
for a
them.
good show.
But Hanna Barbera was one of the big juggernauts that produced a lot of cartoons during the 80s. I'm sure during the 70s, but mostly in the 80s. The problem is a lot of their cartoons didn't all stay in one area. It was spread out. And that's the thing about it now. Now, all the cartoon produced by that company, you'd be surprised how many how big that list is. I'm gonna
It's
do that
probably
right now.
humongous.
Cartoon
It's probably humongous,
produced
if I'm not mistaken.
by
Or am I wrong, David?
uh it's
Off your head,
massive.
before you look at anything, off your head.
Hanna-Barbera, the first thing comes to your mind will be Flintstones, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You, The Smurf, The Jetsons, Tom and Jerry. That would be the most classical way. Every time you see the end of the credit, it's Hanna-Barbera. Then there's SWAT Cat, the Smurfing part
I
already,
used to
the
watch
Pup
SWAT
named
Cats.
Scooby-Doo, Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels, Yogi Bear, right? And if you go deeper, which I'm going to Google, they had the Gathering, the Stone Fox, Going Banana, the Jefferson, the movie, the Paymaster, the Flintstone. They got a long list
It
of
sounds
work.
about Barra did every classic cartoon we remember growing up.
And I'm going to Wikipedia. They're saying that the Rough and Ready show from 1957 to 1960, that's 150 episodes, were broadcast on NBC.
Mm-hmm.
The Huckleberry Hound show that has
Oh God, I
68
remember that shit.
episodes from 1958 to 1961, and it's on a syndication, meaning it's all over the place. They won't let them do exact dating. The the Quick Draw McGraw show, 1959 to 1960, that's 45 episodes, syndicate. The Flintstone from 1960 to 1966, that's 166 episodes, that's on ABC. The Yogi Bear show, 1961 to 1962, 33 episodes, syndication. Top Cat, 30 episodes, ABC. The Hanna-Barbera new cartoon series with a variation of Wally Gator, Church Turtle and Dum Dum, Lippy the Lion and Hardy Ha Ha. 52 episodes from 1962 to 1963. That's on syndication. Jepson, which on multiple years, 1962 to 1963, 1985 to 1987, all have 25 episodes on ABC Network from 1962 to 1963 on ABC, 1985 to 1987 wasn't on ABC, I believe. The Magilla Gorilla Show, 1964 to 1967, 31 episodes, syndication. Jonny Quest, which is you all talking about right now, 1964 to 1965, 26 episodes, ABC. The Peter Thomas Show, 1964 to 1966, 27 episodes. Then you had the Adam Ant Secret Squirrel. Now you can't forget that one. 26 episodes from 1965 to 1967 on NBC. Then you had Sinbad Jr., which I heard of but never got the chance to see it. And
Which
the
one?
Magic Sinbad Jr.
Okay. Okay, so I
1965.
just found it, dude. James Bond Jr. was on TV3.
There was no TV3 on the East Coast.
No.
Now you see where I'm coming from. And I'll continue reading Sinbad Jr. and the Magic Belt.
So on our coast, it was on Fox.
I didn't get to see it on Fox. I never got the chance to see it. And there's I'm looking through the list. There's a long list of production. Long list. This is no
And
joke.
some places called it ITVX channel.
Hmm.
That's a weird name for a channel. I'm
You
sorry.
know what I mean? But we noticed the production was all over everywhere. If it's not on NBC or CBS, it's syndication. I mean some other network. And there are a lot of names I never knew that existed. Besides Sinbad Jr., we got L'Oreal and Hardy, Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossible. Really? Space Ghost and Dino Boy, the Kiddies, We Take Manhattan, the Albert and Castiel Cartoon Show, Birdman and the Galaxy Trio, the Hercules, the Shazam, Fantastic Four, Moby Dick and the Mighty Mator, Samson and Goliath. Dude, they got their hand on so much.
They destroyed the market back then. Let's be honest. They conquered the market.
Conquer. I'm gonna scroll down to the bottom of the list, and all I find is 174.
So
174 production.
my thing with the James Bond Jr. thing is, with that is they conquered it. But what happened to him now?
Remember, we are talking about how much work they have done. Question is, while they're making all this, who are buying the license? Who are producing? Who is airing it?
Okay, here's a good question. One of my questions: what makes James Bond different from other cartoons at the time and now?
Good question. Is the marketing?
All right, hang on a second. Let's get you guys in here, ladies and gentlemen. Please rise for our president. Mr. President, how are you doing tonight?
Busy as always, but I was able to get
No,
here.
this is his turf. Come to history.
All right, Paul, give me what you remember from James Bond Jr. I mean, James Bond, Johnny Quest. I'm sorry.
James Bond. Tree.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. That's stuck in my head. I'm sorry.
Well, I think it came out. I'm only familiar, to be honest with you. I'm only familiar with the original series. Series came out in '64, and that was part of a wave of Hanna and Barbera action genre that was created during that time. Which I was too young to remember because I was born in '69. So what happened was that for a lot of those series, they were packaged together in the 80s, and it was called the Hanna-Barbera World of Super Adventure. So you had Space Ghost, you had the Herculoids, you had the Incredible, you had, there were several series that were kind of bunched up. So when you watched the series, you had, it was Birdman and Birdman, Fantastic Four, Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossibles, Herculoids, Moby Dick and Mighty Mightor, Shazam, and again Space Ghost and Dino Boy. So you had that collection at the time. So Jonny Quest came first in '60. I think they ran the original series ran from '64 to '66. So they ran those constantly. So you had those in reruns all the time. That was typically Monday through Friday after school. You would see those, and then you would have Hanna-Barbera's World Super Adventure that sometimes they would play in the mornings before school, and sometimes they would play in the afternoons afterwards also. And David, it was on WNEW Channel 5 in New York, where they were aired. So you had, what I think set Jonny Quest apart from even those shows was the realism of the product. Like it wasn't. I mean, some of the characters, some of the adversaries, they were kind of like, they could be alien, they could be a different. But as far as the core characters themselves, there wasn't a lot of. It really wasn't a kid's show, to be honest with you. It was almost like it was like an adult type of cartoon back in. But all the cartoons back in the day were relatively serious. Even the Flintstones had adults watching because it modeled a lot of the shows that were on. Like Flintstones, you could basically, I don't know if they stole directly from the Honeymooners, but you could make a case that the Flintstones came from the Honeymooners. So that's why, or I Love Lucy, or any of those shows. So again, it drew in adults as well as it drew in children, and I think the storylines within Jonny Quest were such that even adults could follow the show. So it wasn't just a kid show. You didn't have a talking chimp. You had a chimp in the show, but he kind of acted like a chimp mostly. It wasn't like he didn't talk back to you. It wasn't Scooby-Doo. It wasn't anything like that. The storylines were pretty serious. The situations that they found themselves in were pretty serious ones. And probably also what set it apart, I think, at the time, which might have been different from, I think all these cartoons, the ones I talked about with the World of Super Adventure, the violence in it was pretty apparent. Like, for example, it wasn't like one of those serial cartoons or even shows where the bad guy gets away and he flies away in his plane and says, "I'll get you next time, Jonny Quest." It wasn't like that. Usually the shows ended with whoever the antagonist was meeting a fatal end. Like the shit would blow up, and yeah, you would say, yeah, he's gone, you know. And that's how it ended. So, you know, I mean, it's interesting because they also tried to reboot it in the 80s, I think around 1982 or something like that, because they had, they redid Space Ghost in, I think, in 82. Then they also did Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man, Amazing Friends, all that.
It's
Johnny Quest kind of got a
1986.
reboot in the 80s.
1986.
Was it? I thought it was earlier. For some reason, I thought it was earlier than that.
Yeah, but
Uh,
I also forgot about the Venture Bros. Venture Bros also made almost like side by side with that particular franchise.
I'm sorry, which one now?
The Venture Bros.
Venture Bros?
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
I don't
It would be
remember that one.
It would be like a parody comedy version of Johnny Quest.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
the
but
reboot of Johnny Quest was 1986 called The New Adventure of Johnny Quest.
Okay,
And then
yeah,
back
I remember the
again-
title, but for some reason I thought it was in like 82, 83 time. So that's my my
Yeah,
bad.
when they
forget.
came back-
But
when they came
again,
back in
it
the
was
90s.
but it was a different show because again they toned down the violence. So again, like I said, at the end in the 60s, you died in there. I mean, there was nothing. So again, it was serious content for the time. And again, it was of such a serious nature that I think it attracted a lot of different audiences. Like I said, adults could follow it as well as kids. In fact, I don't know, if depending on how strict you were, I don't know if you necessarily want your kids watching it because it wasn't like it was profane or anything like that or nudity. I'm just saying, but just to see having kids exposed to fatalities in a cartoon, I don't know, for some parents that might have been too intense for the time, because again, it is the 60s, so keep in mind also that
and I'm glad
people
you
weren't
mentioned
as
that.
yeah.
But can you agree that this Johnny Quest is almost like a mixture of Jane Bond and Indiana Jones type of adventure? Because if you watch Jane Bond movies, you watch Indiana Jones movies,
Honestly,
it had almost identical theme to Johnny Quest series.
I took it more like Mission Impossible, to be honest. I'm talking about the Mission Impossible from the 60s. Again, you had this team, you had, the adults, they were like scientists and or pilots or something. Again, the kids were along for the ride, and it wasn't like Johnny was some sort of super, he wasn't as bad as, because when we talked about Mask a couple weeks ago, and I guess the son, Tracker's son in Mask, he wasn't that inept or, that naive. But it's at the same time, he wasn't like the protagonist of the show. It was like usually it was the adults who were really the scientists and the know-how people and the skilled pilots and all that. I mean, Johnny didn't do any of that stuff. He was, if anything, it was like, him and his friend who had the turban on his head. I forget his name, but
Indian, but he had some special ability along the way. Like it was almost as if that boy was like Johnny Quest undercover bodyguard, but he had some ability that was, how would I say? It's almost like a copycat version of Annie. Remember Annie? The original Annie. We had this one Indian guy who doing some weird trick with his
Yeah.
it was just like that, but he was like a
Mhm.
younger version of that.
Yeah. But I see it less that Johnny wasn't necessarily the, he wasn't the muscle. And at the same time, he wasn't necessarily, I wouldn't call him the intelligence either. It wasn't like everybody, went to him for, well, what do we do now? If anything, they would kind of almost accidentally uncover something or a way, or if the adults were in trouble, they found a way to, they were cunning. So they were able to, use ways to get out of situations. But it was clearly the adults who were kind of like the main folks who were kind of running the show at the time. That's what I'm saying. It had enough adult content to where adults could follow it because there was intelligent, scientific conversation in the show. But then with Johnny being like a teenager at the time, it kind of attracted the teens also.
Grace was the muscle and the brawn, and he was I believe a military ex-military. I don't really know what it was, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but also wasn't he like the fighter pilot? I mean, he flew all the planes and all the aircraft.
Anything with motor vehicles, firearms, anything like that was Race. He was the guy. Shit hits a fan, you call him.
Yeah.
But remember,
Then you had the scientist with the guy with the beard. He was like the really smart. I don't know if that was Johnny's father, but
But that was Johnny Potter.
yeah.
Right.
Very.
Boy,
I mean, super sharp.
Then your boy named
guy.
Hadji. Eric put the
Hadji,
name in
yeah.
India. Yeah, Hadji.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it was definitely at the time. I mean, you could just watch it now and get into it because as an adult you could get into it because like I said, the way they treated the subject matter. And so yeah, I mean, but it was interesting at the time. I didn't watch, I would say, a ton of it. Now Eric, he was like the Jonny Quest like nut, but for me, I think it became a point of too much going on. It was almost like with the Transformers at the time. Like I said, the mid 80s, I had limited time to watch certain shows. So again, I might have did like G.I. Joe, Voltron, Transformers back in the day. And a few years earlier, let's say like when I was before high school, like middle school or whatever, yeah, it would be the Saturday morning cartoons. It would be the Hanna-Barbera World of Super Adventure. Or it would be like the 60s version of Superman, the 60s version of the Batman and Robin show. So there was a lot of different shows that were on at that time in the 60s. And so there wasn't any one show that I was married to so much that I followed and watched, or I had to be there to watch every show. So I wouldn't say I was the biggest fan of the show, although I watched the show and I liked the show. But in a crowded field where everybody's trying to get your attention, you just don't have time to watch everything. And again, this is also, as we said last week, this is before VCRs and things. You couldn't record, well, even a VCR, you only could record like one show at a time. So you didn't have the technology to be able to get caught up on a lot of these. You had to pick and choose. And so I was always into something else that was keeping my attention. But all those cartoons from the 60s, even the Spider-Man, especially, and it's interesting, the year, because when I talked about all those shows earlier from the Hanna-Barbera's World of Super Adventure, if you look at the Spider-Man, I mean, the one where you have the lyric Spider-Man does whatever a spider can.
Spider-Man. Yeah,
the original Spider-Man, that all came out in 1967. So from 64, we had the original Marvel Super. I don't know if you guys remember the original Marvel superheroes. It was very crude in terms of the animation of it, because all they did was they took literally the comic books and literally animated panels and panes from the comic books. But you had the Incredible Hulk, you had Captain America, when Captain America throws his mighty shield. You had that Iron Man, Tony Stark makes you feel he's a cool exec with a heart of steel. All those from 64 to 67 was like a treasure trove. The original Fantastic Four, go back and watch that. I mean, that, which is still to me the best version of the Fantastic Four. Because again, they did a reboot of the Fantastic Four in 1980 that just didn't have the same seriousness or gravitas of the original series. But so I would say from 64 to 67, 68, I mean, too many titles to stay up with at any one time. And if you did, then I'm like, you didn't go to school then, because
even in the
certainly,
80s,
Submariner, you had Thor, all those guys. So you had I used to sing all these songs also, like stronger than a whale, he can swim anywhere, he can breathe underwater and go flying into the air. So I used to be able to sing like all those theme songs from those cartoons back in the day. I was really into that stuff then. So that was such a boom era in animation and cartoons and the action adventures that you were able to watch. Clearly, you don't see that kind of stuff today. And that stuff might have stopped sometime in the 80s when you didn't have that kind of mass, and everything was either a reboot of something, or some other cartoon tried to kind of bite off of what was already produced before. I mean, I'm sure you had the 80s, you had He-Man, Thundercats, and all that kind of stuff that we talked about in prior shows. But the late 60s, that was like, baby boom of cartoons birthed out, all from Hanna-Barbera or similar studios. Filmation, I think, came on board in the 60s as well. That they had
Even
the
in the
Spider.
80s,
I think.
Well, 80s
I
and
think we
90s had some good cartoons coming out.
We need to do a show on that. We need to do a show on that, because Hanna-Barbera, when I looked it up on Wikipedia, they have so much work they have done since the 60s to late mid 2000. I'm like, wait a minute, that's a lot of work.
They were hot, bro. Let's be honest, they were hot, and they didn't want to lose momentum, so they were just pushing, pushing, pushing. Same thing what Marvel or slash Disney's doing right now is pushing, 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 and you got some bombers and some flunks. Let's be straight here. But what I was
No,
gonna say with Johnny
but
Quest, hang on a second, Paul. I mean, David, one second, one second. Johnny Quest had at least what I see here, 4 series, not in order, but New Adventures of Johnny Quest, Johnny Gold Quest. The fuck kind of name is that? And the last one, my personal favorite, is the Real Adventure of Johnny Quest. That was my personal favorite
Yeah,
one.
that's probably. I mean, it lines up with it lines up with your age bracket.
Of course.
But I would
Yeah.
say, but looking at even those two compared, just like maybe I'm just call me an originalist, but
Oh,
any reboot of the original has never been better. Transformers, how many Transformers series have been out? And honestly, I can't put anything but above seasons 1 and 2 back in '84. I just can't. Same thing with G.I. Joe. So in any attempts to try to reboot a franchise, I've never quite fell in love with. Now, again, there's some exceptions. I mean, you had Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which I really enjoyed back in the day. But again, the '60s Spider-Man, much more serious, much more witty, and that sort of thing. The animation, was it as good? Maybe not. But you definitely, again, they just treated those series where it's like they wanted more than just a child audience watching the show. Because any adult could have watched the show also, and you could be enthralled by
only pushback I got to that.
enthralled by the storylines and the
Hold on,
seriousness.
hold
A
on.
little
of it.
pushback I got on that. 1 second. You got the floor next, David. The
Okay.
only little pushback I have. Even I know you don't like reboots, but Spider-Man is one of the few ones that you can do different reboots, different version of it, because the way that he was written. Originally, Stan Lee wrote him a certain way that as he gets older, or as the comic gets older, if they had to reboot, he was able to adapt with the years, if that makes sense. And he didn't do it on purpose.
Well, like I said, there's exceptions. Like I said, I like Spider-Man and Amazing Friends. I know there've been a few boots of it, but probably the best one I can think of, because I talked about the Batman and Robin series in '60. That was also in the late '60s. But I think probably most people would say that Batman the Animated Series is arguably probably the best port of Batman. Period. Now, some people may go
version?
Batman and Beyond. Might be what's
Nin-
that? The '90s version,
Okay.
yeah. So I'm saying most people would say when the Batman the Animated Series came out that was like a game changer as well, and for a lot of people that's their favorite Batman cartoon, if you want to call it that. But there were all kinds. Filmation had a Batman and Robin series that came on Saturday mornings. That's why they had that Batmite character in the '80s. So yeah, it was on Filmation Saturday mornings, and Batmite was again a spoofy kind of almost like Mixoplick, but he was just an inept jokester that was always in play. But there have been several Batman animation, but most people, and some people even call coming off of the Batman the Animated Series, Mask of the Phantasm. For some people, they think that's the best Batman movie, animated or live action.
Which one?
So I'm saying, I think that my voice is. Am I speaking okay?
No, yeah.
My voice is moving like
No,
a ninja. So
Panther. You
I
said Mac
don't know.
Panther because it'll be the best Batman movie. Which I totally agree with you.
I know some people just consider, but I'm saying, it comes out of the Batman the Animated Series franchise, is what I'm saying.
Now, what I want to put into play is this: during the 1960s, what global event was taking place during the 1960s?
Oh, the Vietnam War.
During the Vietnam War, when they put in all these cartoons, what would think would be the objective was to put such cartoons? Would they not to keep the family together and get them watching them more entertaining? It would remove their mind off the Vietnam War in some kind of way? Because let's be real, what you just mentioned, I had to put two and two together. It was more gritty, was more entertaining, not just to the kid, but also to the adult audience. In other words, the parent was watching the thing together with their kid, and they're both enjoying something. But
Well, keep in mind. Well, keep in mind the Flintstones was shown in. It was a prime time show,
Yeah.
not a Saturday morning not a Saturday morning show, not a Saturday an afternoon show for the kids. It was shown in prime time. So again, I think cartoons in general were treated with much more having a more global audience involved. Also keeping in mind back in the 60s, again, it may be hard to believe, in the 60s, not everyone had a television set.
Well, let me ask you a question.
So if you're going to pull an audience,
I'm a little too
Yeah.
young to remember this. I wasn't even sperm at the point. Um, Jensen's and Flintstones. I know Flintstones were prime time. Was Jensen's prime time too?
I want to say yes.
Eric, answer the question.
I want to say yes. That it was shown in prime time. I could probably look it up and see what the original. Winston cigarette commercials.
Oh God.
So I mean that's the thing. So you got characters in the
I
cartoon
actually
smoking
remember
cigarettes,
watching that.
but everybody did. I mean, cigarettes was such a part of. I mean, the news. Walter Cronkite at nighttime, he had his smoking his cigarettes during the telecast. Cigarette
I don't know if you
commercials
remember this
were
cartoon.
in every sport. Everybody had a spot for some
and
cigarette
remember,
commercial
my
back in
favorite
the day.
reporter, Peter Jennings, was a smoker at one time before he quit.
But he never smoked on air. I'm saying in the 60s, watch any old school Walter Cronkite or any of those newscasts from the 60s or the 50s. They all had they had the cigarette ashtray on the desk as they're reading the news.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys remember this.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Hang
I'm
on,
glad.
hang on 1 second. I don't remember if you guys remember this. Is a cartoon called Lukey Luke. It was a cowboy. And he always had a cigarette in his mouth the whole time around his horse. He was supposed to be the quickest draw slinger in the West.
I don't recall that, but one want to point out what Mr. Bennett just mentioned. Back then,
Yes, it did. Hang on, but just to correct. Yes, the Jetsons, which originally aired from September 1962 to 63 on ABC, they were in prime time.
but what he mentioned that which is very iconic. He said newscast were allowed to smoke on set. The last time that ever happened, when I ended around the 60s, not in the set, because today time, you're not gonna find nobody on any.
No, but I mean, but everybody, if you watch the sports telecast, if you watch the baseball game where they had the play-by-play commentators and they would take you into the booth, they were smoking cigarettes. I mean, cigarettes were so ubiquitous in the 60s before Surgeon General kind of came out with those warnings and people started kind of turning away from. Now, again, I don't think it necessarily lowered the fact that people smoked, but people just didn't want to be associated with cigarettes on air, so they say, yeah, I never saw this one. I don't think this isn't
1971 it
ringing a
came
bell
out.
to
It
me.
was actually very popular in Greece. It was one of the most popular cartoons back in the day when I was growing up in Greece. So that's it was a comic book. It was a cartoon. It was something I actually enjoyed. Again, it was a kid show. It was 71. That's before. Again, I wasn't even in my dad's nutsack yet. I wasn't even sperm yet. So I wasn't even a jerk plate yet. So this is before my time.
We kind of get the idea. You weren't born, all right?
Too graphic for you, Paul?
Yeah.
But anyway, don't you wish you had one of these buttons sometimes?
You've reached your limit on talking. Shut the fuck up.
No, for me. I mean, you don't you wish you had that button right now?
Some days I just want an eject button, like, and your seat kind of drops into a shark tank, and then the sharks are swimming around and eat you up. So,
Oh, you're
like the James Bond villain from Spy Who Loved Me or whatever. You know, he had that button. People just drop off the desk, slide down the chute into the shark, and the shark eats them up or whatever. So,
the thing people don't realize, David, shut the fuck up over there. There's so many good cartoons out there that we don't even remember or even watch. Lukey Luke.
You couldn't, because Yeah, because like I said, you also had one. Like I said, I'm talking about, especially in the '60s. Not every home had a television set, and if you did have a television set, you had one television set that you had to share with all the family members. So dad was going to watch his sports at nighttime or whatever on the weekend. Mom was going to watch her soap operas during the daytime. As a kid, you might have had the afternoon time to watch a cartoon, but you had to pick a channel because even back then you had to turn the TV with a knob. You didn't have remote control. Didn't come out until like the late 60s, early 70s. And even then that was a luxury item. So again, you did,
but electricity issue. If you're not in the type of area that have stable electricity, then that's a problem.
Oh, and don't forget, before cable TV, you had the rabbit ears and the antenna on the top of the house and all that. So what you could even carry at the time. So yeah, for a lot of people, yeah, there was, like I said, that '60s explosion from the Flintstones that came out in 1960, Jetsons in '62, Jonny Quest in '64, all those cartoons that came out from '67 to '69. Again, exposed. And you still had the Warner Brothers stuff, the Bugs Bunnies and all that stuff. And you had Popeye, right? I don't know if you remember watching. I watched a lot of Popeye growing up. I mean, yeah, with Shelley Duvall and
Robert
who's the comedian? Robin Williams. Yeah.
It wasn't a bad movie.
I wasn't crazy about the movie so much because it's kind of hard to bring that. It's one thing to see he's got them giant forearms on a cartoon, but when you try to do it in real life, then it looks like he has some sort of body dysmorphia or something. So it doesn't hit the same way as in a cartoon.
They didn't do it correctly. That was the problem. They put the muscles way too big on him. Except make them proportionate or pick somebody who actually was big to do it. It would make more sense. They just went on a wrong direction with the movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually didn't think it was a bad movie, to be honest with you guys, for the time. Now, if this same movie came out today, it will flunk. It will flunk completely.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to pull that off, but Jonny Quest, out of all those serials that I talked about, it was probably the most seriously treated. Even the characters, the way they were drawn, they looked like very human-like. The proportions were, you didn't have like with the Flintstones or whatever, or even the Jetsons. I mean, George Jefferson had these incredibly short legs, right, on his long, tall torso and this Pinocchio-sized nose and all that. All the characters in Jonny Quest were kind of drawn to scale. And so, again, it gave you the sense of the feel that this was, and it was an animated action piece that was intended to bring in adult audiences just as much as it did kids' audiences. Because, again, there was nothing that was out of proportion on any character, which was rare at the time, because I'm thinking all those that came out, even the superhero genres, right? I mean, Superman had the big, giant chest and small, skinny legs or something. All those superheroes back then, they were kind of drawn not necessarily to scale, but the animation on Jonny Quest was very lifelike at the time, and so all the more reason why it set itself apart from those different ones. And even with the new adventures that came out, now again, I don't think it lasted as long, or was not nearly as popular, or would oftentimes, and again, I would have to take a look at the episodes again, but a lot of times what would happen was they would simply just do repeats of the old episodes. So even though they said New Adventures of Jonny Quest, if you were a diehard, you'd be like, no, they took that from this one from back in the day. So how new was it when it came out? So again, it's hard to mess with the original, but like I said earlier, I'll give Batman the Animated Series that's probably the gold standard as far as you can take an old property that's been done so many times and put it in a way that people just couldn't get enough of once it came out. Especially if you're a millennial who grew up with that in the 90s. That's probably the first Batman you saw, because you probably didn't see the Filmation Batman. You probably didn't see the Batman from 1967 either. Or you might have saw the Super Friends with Batman and Robin in it.
I'm going to go further back.
But
I'm going to push it even further back. The one Superman anime that I grew up on, and I still like to this day, is 1940s Superman.
Yeah, Fleischman. I think Yeah.
Not sure. I have it actually set up here to show you guys. This is the version I
Yeah.
actually grew up on. And it was on
Yeah.
reruns and VHS and stuff like that, of course. It wasn't a lot,
Mhm.
airing, but I actually enjoyed it. It was a good story. I think it still holds up, to be honest with you guys.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I guess, some of the music and whatnot, I mean, it definitely dates the period,
course.
in the 40s when it had that kind of vaudeville kind of soundtrack to it. But yeah, but the animation was called. But again, I think back then that might have been like a feature. But they might have showed that like, cartoons like that. They were showing us feature films in the movie theaters. So yeah, I mean, especially those Saturday serials that people go to the movies and watch, whether it be the cowboy westerns and whatnot, or the Buck Rogers, the old Buck Rogers serials or whatnot. I mean, people went to the theater to watch that stuff. So probably those Superman serials from back in the day, they were probably shown in a similar fashion.
And you're right. It probably wasn't before TV stuff. It was different.
Well, yeah, obviously you didn't have TV didn't really hit mass until it was invented in 1932. I don't think it really hit mass until the early, as far as commercially sold, probably in the 1950s. And then, yeah, because I think I Love Lucy, I think was one of the first main shows that really took off for television. And then you had, but really it wasn't until the 60s where TV became ubiquitous, where really it was like, when it got into tens of millions of American homes. It wasn't until the 60s before you saw that. So, yeah, movie theaters was probably the way a lot of people consumed a lot of their content back then, because you simply just didn't have the logistics nor the money. Because imagine spending you spend like an 80-inch TV set. Imagine spending that back then for, a little, 25-inch console TV, and they were huge back then also. I mean,
Dude, imagine carrying
that
an 85-inch or a 90-inch through your house back then, the old big box TVs.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was. You like I said, you had one of those, and again, it was the TV with the console. It was the TV, the record player, the stereo system. Everything was on in this one large piece of furniture that sat in your living room, and that was like the entertainment center for everybody. Like I said, not everybody could have a small 13-inch TV in your bedroom or whatever. That you were rich, or that was like a luxury item to have a second or even a third TV in your house.
The old school TV of the yesteryear was not only big, it was massive. That's number one. Because I remember,
radio. It's the radio tube.
I remember carrying the old school TV before with flat screen, and the biggest one you can get was up to like 38 or 42-inch TV. And you know how heavy that bad boy was?
Very.
So anyone trying to get like a 65-inch was almost impossible. That means you're taking a huge chunk of your living room, unless you had to dig into the wall and shove it in there. That's because the back of that TV was massive.
When did you guys start realizing everybody was at foreign TVs, and it was being in almost in the, a living room, the bedroom, the kitchen, almost in every room?
Flat screen. Remember that they had introduced the flat screen TV because remember it's versatile. It's not huge like the big back. I remember the JVC TV, the Sharp TV, the Zenith TV, the Sony TV. I had to work in Best Buy. The old box was huge. That's number one. And to put it on a regular truck, there were people who got cars. We had to tell them you gotta get this shipped to your home. You can't put it in the back of your car. What are they gonna work? That's how bad it was. Until they started to do the flat screen TV, that when they moved all that huge chunk of who knows what they had to go. Because remember, you're changing TV technology, went from being analog, with that what the TV was back then, into digital. We have the LCD liquid crystal display on TV. That was the first of its kind. Before they started to perfect the technology behind it, it started getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But back then, who in their right mind want to put a big chunky ass TV in the bedroom? Yeah,
unless you have money like that. I had to go back a little bit. My numbers were a little bit off. So just to kind of give you a little history of TV. So again, before post World War II, it was only in like a few 100,000 homes. But by 1946, it was only in a few 100,000 homes in 1946. but over 12 million homes by 1951, and then by 1960, they say 90% of homes had a television
One.
set,
Also, I also looked up now between the
one
80s
television set.
and 90s, TVs were probably more getting cheaper, and not. I'm not talking about like a 60-inch or anything like that, like a small TV in people's bedrooms.
Yeah,
Small ones.
I mean, yeah.
Say that again, David.
You know,
It,
yeah, you
yeah,
could put, you could put you could put easy a 25-inch in your bedroom if you got space for it. I
Yeah,
mean,
back
keyword.
then.
If you have space.
yeah,
Because there was never much space. The only space was the living room. That TV was like a furniture by itself. Because it came with its own stand. In other words, you had the TV that came in a box, or the old school TV looked like a box furniture with the TV built in. That was one. Then when the TV started to get big, most of the time it used to be flat screen before they started to introduce the little curve. They started touching up
Mhm.
the curved TV more feature of it. Then later on, they realized they could get with the back because remember, all the technology was based under analog. Using analog more technology for building the TV back then until they start to address, we can move from analog into digital. The same thing with the signal. Remember,
Mhm.
everybody was using analog to receive their TV station that with the
Correct.
antenna. Then when you got into the cable network and all the other distribution networks, so to speak, you moved away from being analog to digital. At one point, they were selling a
Right.
box to have you convert your TV from analog to digital until they start selling more of the TV
Right.
that can do all that without it. So there's a
Right.
huge change.
And also, just another stat here. It wasn't until the mid 1970s where over half of American homes had a color television. So even in the mid 70s, you could, even if you had a set, it could have been a black and white set. I mean, a lot of people don't remember that era either. But again, a lot of the shows at the time were shot in black and white. Like I Love Lucy,
Hmm.
Honeymooners, all those shows were in black and white. They didn't colorize all that stuff yet. So again, and you did. It wasn't until the '60s when you started seeing in color television program. It might have been like the late '50s when some of those shows went, like Bonanza. Might have, I think, started out in black and white, and then they went to color in the '60s or whatnot. They started converting over. But yeah, I mean, it's, like I said, the last 50 years, folks have definitely come a long way with in terms of the technology that was available. It's the affordability, but it's still, you still had the issues of, it wasn't until the '80s until VCRs became popular, where people could start recording stuff, and it really wasn't until like, what was like the 2000s. What was like the first digital platform to record TV? Do you remember what that was, David? The name is escaping me off the
TiVo
top of my
wasn't
head.
TiVo.
TiVo, yeah, that was
Yeah,
like one of the early
yeah.
ones where you had like this digital recording of shows. But that was like what, 2000, late '90s, 2000 when
It had to
TiVo
be
came out.
because after TiVo, then the other company that came out with their own version, I forgot what it was, but TiVo was the forerunner, and the
Wasn't DVR.
DVR was the technology that was given
Oh,
to
okay,
the net.
okay.
But TiVo was the company that does that. The later one, I forgot what company took over it. Because after a while, then the cable company figure out we don't need a third party to do all these things. We can incorporate it into our system, so to speak. Now,
Yeah,
before that happened, there was a trick whereby you can record with your PC. And that's when the Slingbox came into play. And I was
Slingbox.
working
Yep.
in Best Buy, they had something called a Slingbox, where it allow you to not only import your TV, you can watch it and record it on your PC and watch it on your mobile device, so to speak. But the setup was not really straightforward. It's a little complicated, but you got to be techy enough to understand what you were doing. Then when the cable company saw that people were looking for a way outside them to record their TV program, so they were trying to push it, or to do it with us. But remember, they were telling these more expansion card to put in your PC that allow you to do such things after the clean box. So people were doing all the recording because remember, you got people on like all their shows, like Date of Our Life, 24 Hours to Live, all the other crazy long going show that haven't died out no time soon. So it kind of like saying, okay, I could put another external hard drive, record it. Because remember, you get that cassette tape, it could go through like what, 6 hours recording. At least that was the max.
Yeah. Well, now you got the EP to get to 8.
Okay. That
But that was a quality degradation when you
Yeah.
did that. The longer the recording, the quality would degrade. So you only use that for stuff that you wanted to, like, if you were doing your soap operas every day or something like that, then it didn't matter. You weren't trying to save it. But if you want to, like, record a movie, like, in high quality, I used to do a lot of that back in the day. Once I got my VCR, I recorded everything, man. So I had so many titles going to college or whatnot. I had tons of titles that I copied. So
and the thing is, I remember the way where you can do about it, whereby when you come do have your PC next to your TV, had the coaxial cable plug into that extension card that you put in the PC, and you record everything on your computer. Then you have it going back out again. It's a
it's
unique
funny.
setup, but it's annoying.
You know, it's funny. I'm excited. VCRs. VCRs are having a comeback right now, big time. It's a lot of people of our age wants to feel like the old school VCR. Hook it up, push a tape in, and watch a movie.
see, everybody says that until that VCR chews your tape up of the Precious event that you watched. That all goes away very quickly when you're pulling the tape out of the VCR because it's you're munching on your stuff or whatever. So yeah. So
I seen it happen, but it never happened to me once. I got lucky, very lucky, because everybody that I knew, I'm at a friend's house, put the tape out. I'm like, motherfucker, they're ripping it. The tape was like 10 feet long.
Yeah, and especially, and what if it was a rental? Like you went to Blockbuster and you rented a title, and then it got. But I forget what the policy was. I don't know if you had your friend might be able to remind us of what the policy was. But what if you took it home, your VCR chewed it up, or do you have to pay $30, $40? I don't know how much the title was. That fortunately that never happened to me. I'm just saying, but what if it did, where the VCR ate up the rental? I'm assuming you had to pay for the movie outright.
I remember. Shout out to my African brother back in Nigeria. They showed a trick on how to fix the tape, but it's very delicate because first and foremost, one, you gotta watch your hand, keep your hand dust free. Two, when you're pulling out the tape, you gotta be very delicate about it because the way you can tape it, but you gotta tape it on the right side, not at the wrong side. And when you go about it, it's like you're doing it's like you're doing surgery. There was a trick way of fixing that, but it's very 50-50, depending on the quality of the tape. That's what the issue.
Yeah, but even if you preserve it, you're still going to have those wiggly lines and stuff that's going to come to it. It's not going to look pristine. You're definitely going to see some stuff that you can tell where the chew up was.
Fun story, my buddy.
Because it's celluloid. You can't take those wrinkles out of the celluloid. I don't care how good your process is.
Fun story. One of my buddies who's back from the service, he was just visiting. So the buddy I got my tattoo for, when he passed, before he passed, he bought this overpriced VCR. I think he paid like close to like over 2,000, some shit like that. It was high tech. Takes like 5 or 6 VCRs at one, VHS at once. So it was this very high tech machine. But here's the problem with this high tech machine, David. It ate every VHS he almost had. Every time. I can't hear you, dude. You gonna drop your thing.
I'd say that's what it meant for eating VHS tape. No matter how high tech it was.
The last time that happened, I was at his house. He took the VHS, threw it against the wall, smashed it completely. Next thing I know, he comes in the room with a bat. Let's say that VCR never survived the night.
I wouldn't be surprised.
No, dude. Most I ever paid for a VCR was $85. I think, was it?
No, back in the day, a 2-head VCR was like $279. A 4-head was like $479.
No, I'm talking about when I bought it. It was turned.
Yeah, they're pretty cheap. Yeah, they're pretty cheap at the time for sure.
My mom had one, but she ended up burning out. So she says, "I'm not replacing it. You're living in Greece. So what's the point of having it in here?" Okay, I'll give her that. You know what I'm saying? I remember when I bought my first DVD player, and they were expensive. You remember?
Oh,
sure.
But except if you have a bargainer mother who is cheaper than dirt, and she knows how to scam anybody at a store illegally. And like she talked, somehow somebody put the wrong sticker on the VCR.
But
Sony one, by the way, right?
but then the two
Hang on, David. Let me finish the story. Let me finish the story first before you say anything. So it was a J.C. Penney's, I think it was, or some shit like that. I don't remember what store it was. It was an electronics store in New York. I don't remember if they're either even around anymore. And somebody put the wrong sticker on the thing. So my mom was arguing with the guy. Like, listen, it's not going to be $185 for the VCR. It's like $85. The sticker says that. Arguing back and forth. Eventually, the manager comes like, "The sticker says that. That's what you have to pay, man. We can't argue." And he's just, "That's what she says is right." But nobody realized my mom puts the stickers on them. He's peeled up the sticker or something else and put it on there.
Is the statute? You're just basically confessing on a live program your mom's indiscretion.
Bro,
is the statute of limitations exceeded so that your mom can't get in trouble for?
Oh yeah, we're talking about over 20.
Okay, I'm just checking. I'm just saying. I just want to make sure statute of legal limitations is over so these folks can't come back and sue you.
We used to go to IGA back in New York, Brentwood. At least they weren't scanning things in it. They were still going with the stickers, marking them.
That's not like video
used to change all the fucking stickers.
No, that's not like video chat.
Obviously got caught, and the manager goes, it starts scratching it off like double sticker. And my mom goes, "Oh," and he's just laughing and like, okay. He goes, they knew my mom was doing it. They didn't care as long as she paid something for it.
It sounded like she went to Radio Shack and conned them out of their money because that's how Radio Shack went out of business.
It wasn't Radio Shack. It wasn't that. I remember the commercial was like a whistle. One of the whistles. Was it?
But here's the thing: there were 3 competitions for DVD players: Samsung, Sony, and Panasonic at the time, because that technology belonged to them. They had the patent for that. It's heavy. And the way that I remember working with Best Buy, Samsung DVD player and Sony DVD player was thrown like hot cake. Because
Yeah, they were going. Dude, that's why PS2 won so much in the game console war because of the
PS2 hurt the Xbox. No, not Xbox. PlayStation. No, what is PlayStation? No, sorry, it's Sega. Sega Dreamcast was hurt by PS2 and PS3.
Okay, it was PC Richardson son. That's the story we went to. What?
You wrong. Your mom's wrong for that. PC Richardson son. Really?
What was so special about that store?
That was New York City owned store.
No, well, it's PC Richard. Shout out to PC because they're the only ones who survived. Eric had mentioned in the chat Tops appliances, but you had Tops, you had the Wiz, you had Crazy Eddie.
What was that store that had in Manhattan near City Hall? I forgot the name of that store. You right across the street from City Hall. I forgot the name of it. That store.
I'm not sure. I mean,
there was the electronic.
I mean, the only old school franchise that's still open. B&H is still open. And like I said, but all these other guys, Circuit City closed. Oh, I guess you have Best Buy still open. But yeah, Tops, Crazy Eddie, The Wiz, Nobody Beats The Wiz. All those shows, Crazy Eddie. I remember his commercials. I think he made put more in his commercials than money he made. Radio Shack, yeah. So all those appliance outlets, they're mostly they're mostly gone. But yeah,
fun behind the scenes conversation I had with a few people who actually I know work for Best Buy. Best Buy is struggling really bad because of. Do you work for Best Buy right now?
I used to work with them in Anything Lexington and the one in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. So I'm aware of Best Buy practice. The issues right now is that they're losing real bad.
Yeah, against Amazon.
Not just against Amazon. Micro Center is another one.
According to an associate I spoke to, the general manager by here, he said Amazon is destroying them more than anybody right now.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Like, let's say a TV costs X, Y, and Z numbers. First, you don't have to pay for shipping. 2, they deliver right in front of your house the next day. But if you have something like I do, like an 85-inch TV, installations in a bitch. Now Amazon offer installation for free too if you want it.
Yeah, it's tough. That's why I said PC Richards. They've been around probably the longest, and they're still kind of going, which I'm surprised at. But yeah, nobody beats the Wiz. Yeah, that was a again a very popular chain back in the 80s and 90s and whatnot. And they eventually folded also. So
Even
I give PC Richard because they sell everything. They sell like appliances. They sell as well as TVs and electronics. So I guess they find their
J&R.
they find different ways to make
Remember
income.
the store called J&R Music World?
Yeah,
That used to be across the street from City Hall.
right.
all right, let's get back on topic here for a second. We went way off topic today.
Not really way off, but we're still dealing with the
Now, but I think this it kind of spun off because we were talking about again the ability to watch all these shows, including Jonny Quest, in part because of the day, because you had such limited access to watch things as you do now.
bingo.
Now you can go back and watch. You can get the whole series on streaming or something like that and rewatch it if you want to. But I would still say that the Batman animated series is still probably the most successful reboot of a cartoon serial that I've
Compared to
seen.
Jonny Quest.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah, the New Adventures. I wasn't enthralled with.
You weren't on yet, but do you any chance remember James Bond Jr.?
This title, yes, I didn't watch it. I don't think I watched it.
Okay. At least you remember. I know it wasn't on for a long time. I know it was before my time, but I remember watching it on reruns in the States actually when it was like dying off pretty much.
And that's what I was
Wait,
trying to
the
point
thing-
out to you.
Go ahead, David.
So I was trying to point out to you because that show, even though you mentioned it, I had to look into it. I was like, what station was it aired in? Because when I was reading the list of all the Hanna-Barbera shows, if it's not NBC, if it's not ABC, if it's not CBS, but it says syndication, that meaning based on who got the light to the broadcast on their network, either on the East Coast or Central or the West Coast.
Hang on, David. I have a question for you guys. It was this new generation coming up. Do you think Jonny Quest will work today if they redid it with a new generation?
Yes and no.
Okay, I'm hearing. I'm all ears.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, it could work because it had a very unique storyline. No, it may not work because you need to write new story because the way Jonny Quest was being built out back then, there's a level of continuation that was going with. But to create a new version remember, I looked it up. The new adventure of Jonny Quest was a reboot in 1986. The real adventure was another reboot that made it 1996. So if you were to make a reboot now, what will you call it this time? That's one. Two, what kind of storyline will you spin it off with? Are you gonna do it based on the original? Remember, the original had 26 episodes. Jonny Quest can go beyond 26 episodes, but if you were to do that, who will be the writer on your team? What kind of storyline are you going to create? What kind of mystery you going to put into this? And how can you make sure you don't drop the ball? Because according to Mr. Bennett, when you do another reboot, you may miss it off the mark. It will not be as good as the original one. So let's be real on that. That's why I say it's a yes and a no. Yes, you have to take not to reboot it, but storytelling. Are you going to be able to tell a great story that is not going to make it look like it's less than what it used to be? Am I wrong, Mr. Bennett? Tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, storytelling is the life and death of any series, regardless of reboot or original. So but I think I say yes, they could, but it couldn't be like on mainstream TV. I think if you make it a streaming, you put it on Netflix or one of the streaming platforms, and again, you bring back which made it what it was. You bring back the violence. You bring back the realism. You bring back the things that drew not just again kids, but adults and people who would be attracted to the show. I think you certainly could bring those back if you want to start something new. But again, the old shows themselves, even today, they still hold up. That's the thing. I mean, a lot of those older cartoons, that's what's amazing to me. Like the storylines, everything is enough to keep your attention. So, but I don't know how many. I got to look up how many episodes of the original series there were. But if they wanted to again continue in that vein, yeah, put it on a stream, put it in one of the streaming platforms, and I think you can do something with that.
Because I remember I did a show on this thing, the reboot of Trigun, and the reboot called Trigun Stampede. Now I was able to watch the first season with 12 episodes. It was properly remastered. With I give it props to the producer and the illustrator. The visual is great. The storytelling is kind of like they were pushing it almost beyond the edge. It was getting very edgy. And the storyline, 'cause remember not Johnny Quest, the Trigun storyline is very, very unique of itself. So to make it up to the original, that was a challenge. So take that idea and say you want to do the same thing with Johnny Quest. Either you're doing 3D CDI with mixed with animation, so to speak, with this modern technology you're having right now. That's one. Story, like you mentioned, storytelling can either break or make. How will you tell the story? Are you gonna bring back the violence that made the original Johnny Quest iconic for what it is?
Let me ask you a question, David. This goes with what you're saying now. This question I had is, let's say they're going to reboot Johnny Quest all of a sudden, right? You're hearing it.
Okay.
Hang on. Don't jump the gun.
I'm
Let
not
me
jumping.
finish.
I didn't load it yet.
I was loaded already. What would you keep? What would you change?
Wow. I didn't even think about that. What would I keep? I would keep Race. I would keep Dr. Quest.
The characters obviously are going to be saved.
I would keep the character. But you know what? This came to my head just now. If I'm gonna do a reboot of Johnny Quest, they gotta be an introduction or a storyline showing what made them what they are today, how they came about together.
Backstory?
Because like a backstory, like how do Race know Dr. Johnny Quest's small father? How do you know him? What are their connections together, so to speak? What happened to Johnny Quest's mom? Who is she? What happened to her, so to speak? How a Neji, the Indian boy, came about to be a part. These are questions that if I'm going to do a reboot of Johnny Quest, I gotta do a thorough reboot. It had to be a proper storyteller of trying to figure out how do these individual characters came about together? What made them come together as a team? What was the purpose for them to be as a team? What was the mission behind it? That's what I'm looking at. Who did they rub up the wrong way on the way to the path of coming together? Who did they clash with on idea or perspective before they became villains, so to speak? It's like saying you're taking Johnny Quest and you're having a flair, I hate to say it, but you might have to, a flair of Jane Bond. Because look at Jane Bond storytelling. There's a level of connectivity, consistency across the board. You know, you swap out different Jane Bond because there's a relativity whereby who are these villains, where they're coming from, why they're coming back to these same organizations. So it's safe to say, yeah, look at Johnny Quest like with the organization, so to speak. How they became an organization, where they got this funding, how they became what here, because there was questions even as a kid. I was asking, how they able to afford that plane? How they able to get such technology? How did it all started? Like, we would like to know. Am I wrong? Well, you, Mr. Bennett.
Yeah. Well, the only thing what I would change, obviously, it's still the 1960s, and unfortunately, some of the characterizations of people still reflects the 1960s. So they may find themselves in Africa or some other place where there's persons of color, and they're kind of looked at as savages or what have you. So again, Hadji certainly at the time was probably a breakthrough type of character, because you're going to have a character of color who is Indian, who's certainly you're not going to see a lot of that on mainstream television. So as much as to say that was a breakthrough in having him there, all those adventures when they were going after some tribes or something, it was always some Aboriginal tribe or something. So again, just the perception of the persons of color weren't necessarily the most positive ones. But again, I blame that more so on the era, more so than on the intent of the writers or what have you. That's just, so yeah, if they were going to do a reboot or something, if you're going to have persons of color if not part of the main cast, but people you encounter, don't make them all like, savages with, bones in their noses and all that kind of stuff that, we're just trying to get away from, those types of characterizations of people. So that'd be the thing I would definitely change in the
So if you
series.
say that, if you say we don't keep Neji, should we bring in an African character? Or how would I put it? I believe when they made Johnny Quest back then in the 1960s, it was based on event that took place at that time that it would add to their storytelling. Is that correct?
Possibly, but even with him, I mean, they did stuff like he's got the turban on. We've all seen pictures of the snake charmer, right? It's even in the title of the thing. He's blowing his flute or whatever, and the snake is kind of coming up. Again, just tropes about other people. That it's like the white characters in the show, that they're the ones who are smart. They're the ones who are, quote unquote civilized. Everyone else is sometimes they're bound to the tropes that they're in. But like I said, it's the 1960s.
I get it now.
And even with all those characters that we're talking about, all those shows that we're talking about, you didn't see a lot of diversity in any of those
Okay,
shows.
and I get it. Now, compared to 1960 to 2025, if you were to make a new reboot for this generation of 2025, is it safe to say we have more than enough stories? We can tell whether we are adding some event that took place within the last 10 years, either between Ukraine, either Syria, either in Libya. Like, we can somewhat generate a story.
I don't know, because all the storylines seem to be out of what would be considered modern society. Like I said, they either dealt with primitive peoples or maybe some alien type of invaders or something like that. Very little actually dealt with the actual world.
Okay.
So again, there was a fantasy element to it that took you out of modern, like you said. I don't think, and they definitely weren't going to touch anything Vietnam related or anything else. None of those shows were going to do that.
I get
thing.
it. I get it.
So I think, yeah. So it's a fantasy action adventure as well, right? They're not dealing with organized. They weren't dealing with organized crime. They weren't dealing with drug lords and things of that nature, but more like the megalomaniacal people who were trying to manipulate a situation or take over some stuff, or pose a threat to the world or to the globe or whatever, because they had more diabolical plans. Those kind of megalomaniacs they were trying to go after, but they weren't going after drug cartels. They weren't going
I get
after.
it. But I was trying to find an angle whereby it's not like you're dealing with drug cartel. It's almost like you're dealing with secret organization are doing things that are beyond. I'm trying to look for the word. It's like almost like you're dealing with the branch of the Hitler crew who are dealing with the supernatural, trying to do something. It's like you're mixing with the Red Score type of storytelling. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out if you were to do a reboot of Johnny, how would it make it more intriguing or more compelling to watch? What kind of story you're gonna tell with it? We make it a twist where it's almost like you're dealing with the Red Skull group kind of people, where you're dealing with things on a supernatural realm, or you just said you want to do real world thing. I get it, but in this time, there's a way we can make some kind of move or twist to it, but not make you feel like you're dealing with real world, but you're dealing with something on the underworld, so to speak, like with a twist of mystery, if it's possible.
I think that, again, the fact that they went into those other areas, I think that fantasy genre of it also kept it interesting. Because again, and let's face it, who wants to deal with the real world, right? I mean, for all of us, even as kids, all this stuff was basically an escape from the realities of whatever situations that we might have even been dealing with personally.
And I get it because that question is when Peter asked that question. The first thing came to my mind, like, I don't want to make it like a copy in this new franchise that is becoming very popular called Solo Leveling because they have a very unique storytelling. Now, looking at Jonny Quest, I'm like, how will you do something whereby you make it relevant, but it's not a copy of anybody, but you give it its own mystery of itself. Either you're dealing with the supernatural, either you're dealing with the third dimension, or you're dealing with historical fact that is tied with supernatural. It's like Jonny Quest it's kind of like Indiana Jones in a way. It was doubling double thing on the unknown.
Yeah. And like I said, including alien visitors or like I said, megalomaniacal leaders and stuff. I think there's enough of that you can kind of incorporate into the series. But again, I just wouldn't do, especially in this climate, I wouldn't do anything that's kind of tied to real world events.
I get it.
Or what have you. You know what I mean? I think I would keep it in that fantasy space because again, the world is depressing enough. So drug cartels or what's going on, like you said, Ukraine or whatever. I mean, I'm like, I want to, and the thing is, especially with the world of being, it's so. I think the one thing about all those silly cartoons and shows back then, everything was kind of black and white then, right? I mean, you kind of knew who the bad guys were, who the good guys were, and you felt good at the end. Now everything is, these days in the real world, you don't know who the good and bad guys are out there. Because everyone's got some culpability somewhere. So again, you don't want to complicate, but it's to kind of go to a time when you had malevolent beings, whatever they may be, and then you had this group of brave individuals who would, pose a threat to the world or to that society or what have you. And yeah, they were dealt with, and they were dealt with, like I said, they were dealt with fatally. So no more orange villains with ridiculous hair. Yeah. So I mean, keep it in that sort of innocent space. I think people long for that. I mean, and like I said, the thing what I'm seeing is like with like when they did Cobra Kai. If you watch some of that, didn't it kind of remind you of like a simpler time?
Absolutely.
Where it's like, yeah, you know who the bad guys are. There's no, if anything, you may understand Johnny a little bit better and kind of the world that he comes from. You tell his backstory, so to speak, but still, you feel good after watching it. When the two schools, when Johnny's school and Daniel's schools combined, it's like the ultimate, it's almost like a wrestling storyline, you know what I mean? Where the two form antagonists, they form a team or something like that.
I would call it a wrestling storyline. It's almost like I'm looking for that exact word. It's like a turning point of event whereby it made them go to a level of life whereby one was rival now become ally because they find out they're not too different from them. They're completely alike.
Yeah.
In many ways
but I like the way they built the story. Like I said, when they fleshed out Johnny, I mean, again, if certainly after the first film, you thought he was the biggest jerk in the world. You saw the beginning of Karate Kid 2 when, Kreese beats him up and all that. And then you don't hear from him again. And then you empathize with them as they go through the earlier shows. You empathize. He's had it rough. He didn't, even though he was in a rich family, his father-in-law was a bully. And so again, you empathize with him, which made when he did team up with Daniel, who's always sort of the proverbial good guy. And even then they brought him down a little bit to say, hey, he's a car salesman, a car dealer, but he's done some, his record's not totally clean either, as much as he wants to paint himself as the good guy who does no wrong.
And his teacher, Mr. Miyagi, had a hidden dark path that he didn't even know about, and that kind of like brought him down to it. Like, not everybody perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that, but just the themes of it, like it was part of watching Cobra Kai was almost like a return to like a refreshing like how shows are. But now it's like a lot of shows get so complicated, or everyone's so complicated, you don't
They
know
they,
who's what's
they
what.
overdo it sometimes. I think with the shows now versus back in the day was simpler times. But you also understand what kind of world we're living into now. These simple times are not there anymore either.
I blame the Attitude Era for that. See,
Hey,
Yeah, but let's
hey,
be
the
real.
Attitude Era
But
changed the narrative. You know, there's no good guys, there's no bad guys. There's just shades of gray and
AKA
whatnot, and
AKA
so it's
Vince McMahon. He put a new culture.
Vince McMahon is responsible. Blame just when in doubt, blame Vince McMahon for everything. There's wrong
Bingo.
with society.
Because it's not only that. Even on Friday Night SmackDown, Randy Orton said John Cena was a role model for a lot of kids. In other words, John Cena was doing what he was supposed to keep kids from going AWOL due to the Vince McMahon influence. Everybody can say Vince McMahon changed the culture of the United States in a huge, mighty way. It was scary. Even a school teacher had to lie about what he doing, got caught doing wrestling. And everybody, ain't that our home teacher? Mr. Striker.
bro! I even said it on air. I told Paul the story, and when we met McFoley, he knew this guy. My mom's doctor, Frank Roma Scavenge. He used to be Frank the
Mm.
Clown. And I mentioned to him, I went to Foley. I go, yo, do you know Frank the Clown? Like the doctor? Of course I know him. He goes, that's my mom's doctor. Like, no shit. How is that old fucker doing? He goes to me. I thought it was hilarious. I remember walking into his office the first time, and I go through the hallways. I'm like, did I walk into a doctor's office or a wrestling museum? He has all over things signed from like a t-shirt from 123 Kid, Rock shorts, Bill Goldberg shirts, things like holy shit, and it is signed to him. He goes, "Hey Doc, good job, or keep up the good work, or stuff like that." And like they believed in his dream to help people, and that's he was the cheapest doctor. If you didn't have insurance, it was like $30 to see him, and if you didn't have insurance still, he had a whole office full of samples. He just mail cartons he had just in case you needed to carry to your car. That's how good doctor he is.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah. I don't know. Peter, I hate when you did it when you asked that question if you want to do a reboot because now that I look back on every show we have seen before, Cobra Kai was the most nostalgia show that so many people who used to the Karate Kid could have helped them from not watching it. It gave them a kind of like a feel like, I want to know what happened to the guy after the high school, after all that thing. How did he progress? And that's what
I
Cobra
have
Kai was.
one issue with Cobra Kai right now.
And what is that?
The movie is coming out. They're not counting the Cobra Kai series at all into it.
No,
That never happened.
in a collaboration out of respect for Mr.
I mean, you're
Miyagi,
talking about the Karate Kid with Jackie Chan
Jackie
and
Chan.
Ralph
Yeah,
Macchio.
Yes, they're
because
doing.
they say something about the history whereby I was watching a thing called Baki. They mentioned karate was actually kung fu to begin with, and
That
they're
is correct.
tracing the history. So when I saw that, I was like, damn. Because if you ever
Actually,
watch,
if any of you
ever,
guys are on my Facebook fan page, please check it out. The Spartan Institute Network fan page. I just posted a video with one of my old instructors, Professor Gary. He was fast, the guy. He was doing a video about teaching, and I put Master V, the head instructor who created the system called V Arms with Jitsu. You may have heard it, David, because it's very popular in New York.
I may have.
Yeah, but I mean, I still have a hard time. They put so much work in the Karate Kid Cobra Kai. I have a hard time swallowing that pill. Like, why would you literally not put that in? You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Yeah, act the actor. Because remember when they picked to do a Cobra Kai series from the very beginning, many people didn't think they were going to work.
Oh, they didn't think it was going to go this far.
And the fact that they had the two iconic actors from the original Karate Kid, and they flushed out the storyline how they wanted to be. What make you think it was going to work? Not that it worked, it supersede what they want to work at. Because remember, the Karate Kid franchise had a very huge fan base. And the fact that they utilize their fan base to support their project, but also make it whereby there's a level of expansion. Because remember, we've seen the progression after the Karate Kid. We've seen the progression, what happened after they went their separate way, what they became, what's going on, what's the next generation,
And,
and the way
and
and
I
the way
get
and
that.
the way
I
they
get all
and
that.
the way they did it. They did it in a way that not only draw the audience into the storytelling they were doing.
Let
It
me ask you
add,
guys a question for a second here
go
before
ahead.
we move on. Have you guys seen the end of Cobra Kai, first of all?
I
I
haven't
didn't
got
see
to see
the
it.
end though. I
I
gotta
didn't
go
see
back
the
and
end
watch
yet.
the last
All
season.
right, and then we can't even talk about it because I don't want to spoil anything for you guys. Because the ending was, to me, disappointing a little bit.
I'll have to talk to my kid about it because they were watching
Yeah,
that thing
the
heavy.
only thing I will mention is the way they finished the series with the two villains. How they finished them off. It was like, that's it. That's the best you have. You could have done better. But one thing I will say is, when YouTube first launched this, they didn't know it was going to be a money grabber. That's why they sold the rights to Netflix. And now I bet you YouTube slash Google is kicking themselves in the ass. Like, holy shit, we
Hit a,
just lost a lot of money.
no, hit a problem. YouTube was not looking into creating a production studio like Netflix and Amazon was been doing. YouTube is more like we are the independent contractor. We make our content for their channel to promote whatever type of video they promote. Mind you, that's what it is. Because look at Mr. Beast, perfect example. Do YouTube give him the studio to do what he do? No. They made the money from all their videos and their views to get their own production studio, do what they got to do. That's what everybody was doing on YouTube like that. Anyone who making millions of dollars have their own production studio. YouTube don't have their own production studio, what make them different from both Netflix and Amazon. Now,
Correct. I'll
now,
give you that.
if they were to do such a thing, then there'll be a lot more shows staying on YouTube, just like the Pop the Balloon.
I would think if they kept Cobra Kai, they were thinking a different way. I think they would
They would,
start investing into actual content from their channel. I
they
mean,
would, they would have, but look at the leadership. What were they thinking? What were they looking at? What I'm saying, YouTube is no different from Netflix and Amazon for the sake of their organization infrastructure. But they were not thinking of let's start producing shows and video. No, whoever come on YouTube, we give you the reign to produce whatever you want to produce. And make sure you don't break our policy, you don't mess with our bottom line, our ad dollar, so to speak, which is fine. That's just it. Because I listen to all the content creators, especially the tech content creator who I mentioned how you do operate. It's sometimes very funny, but it's not what Netflix or Amazon is doing. So if you want to look at it this way, they could have stayed, but if they stayed, what would they make off that? A lot of content creators who on YouTube want to make more money or trying to get that money grab, they were leaving for other networks who would offer them more money for creative rights into it, and so to speak. Like, for example, the balloon part of the balloon show. The criticism of the season one on Netflix is nowhere near the original one on YouTube, but she's still doing her own on YouTube. What I'm hearing, and that is correct. So now you have two versions of Part of a Balloon, the watered down version they have on Netflix, and the genuine one they continue to do here on YouTube, which they're using their own money in their own production. YouTube is not sponsoring them. So I hate to say that Cobra Kai was a little bit better off leaving YouTube, going to Netflix because Netflix was investing in them. Netflix was giving them production money. Netflix was giving their studio to use. Netflix was giving resource to make better content with it. Does YouTube do that? No. I'm not shitting on YouTube, but their business model, their business policy say otherwise. You produce the content, we'll give you a mean to broadcast it. That's just it. And it sounds kind of shady like, but
And it's not Shady's business. I get it.
okay.
And I get it. Because unfortunately, as much as we want to say, also YouTube have lost a lot of money because a lot of people, including myself, I don't do this anymore because I actually use the platform a lot and I keep it now. But back then, a lot of people usually do the month free prescription of Prime, YouTube Prime, to just watch the show. And then once the show, finish watching, they just cancel the prescription. And that's how YouTube lost a lot of money too. In the same time, I personally use the prescription all the time because it's with doing our content here and everything that it comes in. It works for me better to just have a Prime membership. But in most people, an average Joe who does not do content and stuff like that, the only benefit of having a Prime membership is you can literally lock your phone and still listen to it and skip commercials. If you don't care about locking your phone as you're watching it, you don't need it really.
And I get your point. It's like saying, what if our network grows so big to the point that someone want to offer us money to move shit from here to Netflix and do our podcast over there and give it a better production look? You're not going to turn it down, would you? But you're over here.
Absolutely not. I would jump on it back.
So
because
imagine whatever content creators are going through right now on YouTube. This is why I look at what Cobra Kai was doing. They had something going on YouTube. YouTube could have capitalized and made it as their poster child of future production to put on. They didn't think about it that way. It's all based on what they have on leadership. DePaul is a tech guy just like me. And I'm sure he has a higher level than I am, but when we listen to the leadership in these organizations, what are they looking at? What are their mindset? What are they trying to expand to?
Well, no one's really trying to invest. I mean, you're talking about if you're trying to open up a major production studio, that's just a lot of investment, which certainly now, Google is a publicly traded company. And just like with any company, if you're going to be talking about taking a large percentage of quarterly earnings to invest in a 5-year plan, I mean, to me, that's the problem with being a publicly traded company. You can't invest in the long term. If YouTube said, "Look, we're gonna build out this thing in the next 2 or 3 years, and it's gonna probably cost us in 9 figures in order to do that," again, it's probably smart long term. But again, if you're a stockholder, you're concerned about quarterly earnings. So again, that's why a lot of publicly traded companies, that's why private companies, at least on the outside, that's why if you can do it, be private initially, until you get to a point where you want to be publicly traded. But by then, you're not trying to upset the apple cart. You want to kind of keep status flow and keep steady income or whatever that's coming in. So yeah, I can certainly understand a platform like YouTube that didn't start out that way, looking to do that. Or if you need to change for survival. So obviously Netflix had to change their business model because, again, the videotapes and everything was going away. And so they had to kind of do a total change in terms of becoming a production company in order to stay afloat. YouTube currently doesn't have to do that as of yet. So until the hurt gets there enough where people say, "Look, we either change or we die," then YouTube is still going to make, tons of money with, using independent content creators to create content, and they're so big, they've been cut back because everybody thought 5 years ago, everybody who came into the space thought they were going to be a YouTube billionaire because they saw certain shows. They saw Kevin Samuels or they saw Lead Attorney or whatever, and he was showing people, oh, yeah, and this is how much you can make a month and this and that. So everybody went for the deal or whatever, but then YouTube slipped the rug from under everybody, and they changed their payment terms. So all those guys who were making all that money in YouTube said, "Oh, sorry, we got to change it up." So you went from making $10,000 a month to barely $1,000 a month or whatever, just like that, because they changed the algorithm and they changed how they monetize people. So that big boom that everybody was going for, YouTube figured it out.
That was the new gold rush in a way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And people don't realize like what we do on this platform is not that easy to push out. The algorithm changes so much and so rapidly. Once you think you figured it out a little bit, bam, they
Like
pull
yeah,
it right out of your leg.
again they pulled the rug out from under you. So yeah, I mean, to if they want to do that kind of move within the YouTube space to actually doing productions, yeah, that's it's got to hurt enough, or the profitability is such. Someone's going to have to pitch it that this is going to be so profitable for us that it's worth the investment. And then you got to sell that because it's a publicly traded company. You got to sell that to your investors. Yeah, we're gonna take a hit. So that next quarter, for the next few quarters, the numbers, that stock price, and all that stuff is not going to be what it was. Don't panic, because again, the windfall's coming. But again, how many companies, especially when you're talking about big, this is like one of those big luxury liners. It takes a while to turn a corner. If you want to go in another direction, how much does it turn to turn that? These aren't Sea-Doos. See, like we're Sea-Doos. We can switch up what we want to do as a content channel anytime that we want. If we get to like 500,000 subscribers plus, we can't mess with too much. If we want to keep that, we got to keep the base satisfied. So,
and if you think about it, another thing that I also know that a lot of content creators, not a lot of, a good number of them know that you can't rely just on YouTube money. You need to get ad dollars. You need to get like sponsorship for your show. Who allow you to market their product on your show? Like some content creators, give a shout out to Abba and Breach. They make their ad for certain product that has sponsors to their own shows as well, and they do their own ad for them. Some people are catching on to it. Saying, okay, I will have 2 or 3 sponsors and line up that they to work to our sponsor, and they make their own ad to prevent YouTube from putting their own ad into their program. Now, okay, we talk about ad, we could do the ad to ourselves. We can market certain product, then go back into our program. So there's a trick that's going on that a lot of content creators on YouTube are figuring out. Like, you know what? I don't like YouTube ad into my program. It kind of like cut up. It get in between a certain conversation. So I ought to do our own speaking, our own talking point, whatever, or make our own ad for which company that sponsors our show, so they will put the algorithm out. So it's a lot of going on right now.
Yeah.
And people don't realize you don't really make money on videos anymore. The videos are like pennies. It's more on their sponsorships. That's why you like Alpha Male, who does a lot of content on men's grooming, for example. Every video, that's one thing why I stopped watching, to be honest with you guys, because I just couldn't hear the advertisements any much. And every time he does a video, they say his beard. Oh, this is why you should go check out Brio Manscaped, for example, or X, Y, and Z. Like, all right, dude, I get it. You need sponsorship, you need money, but every video, like, kind of back off on it a little bit. He was like shove it out in the middle of the video, like, oh, it's going go, and then all of a sudden he throws that like, oh, you should go this. Oh, here's my code for 20% discount, and also kick back to me. I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
But no one's gonna change that unless the watchers or the viewers send the message loud and clear that we don't necessarily want that. So then you're gonna have to make a choice. Do I keep my base satisfied, or do I go for the ad dollars because it's right there in front of me? It's like, you kind of turning down free money, and some of those you only have to do it once, because again, you can just keep playing the same ad. Just in the, it doesn't have to be a lot of these guys. It's not even live. They just insert it into the show at some point, and they can just keep playing that same ad over and over again every time the show comes on. So yeah, it's definitely.
I am more okay if you say like we're strong right now. It says our little thing in the bottom. If he said, "Oh, tonight's show is sponsored by X, Y, and Z," and my promo code, I'll be okay with that. But when he literally stops halfway through his video and just but his advertisement or sponsorship, I'm like, oh man, come on, dude.
Yeah. And
some of the stuff he sponsors is his own company he owns.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like his skincare or his cologne company. I'm like, all right, bro, I get it. You need to make money. I feel you. We're all in the same boat, but come on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of it. But again, everything is advertised. I mean, the thing that annoys me most about going to the movies, well, actually, I shouldn't say it annoys me, because what I learned certainly in the last few years, I can be 15, 20 20 minutes late to a movie and still get there before the movie starts. Because now every movie theater has 15 to 20 minutes in previews and in, like, say, even commercials, like real commercials. It's not even previews anymore. It's previews and it's commercials at the same time.
I used to love going to the movies early to watch the trailers.
Eric wants to know what's on my shirt, so it's a Star Wars shirt. Okay. 1977, the original, baby. So there you go.
I used to love going to movies early to watch the trailers because that was my favorite part to see what else is coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Now everything's on YouTube. There's no point to go early. Make sure you're there before the
Right.
trailers hit. Because
But you're actually having like actual commercials now. I mean, that's why the movies you didn't. Yeah.
Because honestly, I have an 85-inch TV, and literally, I had somebody over a while ago, and he goes to me, he goes, "Wow, you actually have a movie theater in your house? Like, what do you mean? Like, you have the 85-inch TV at surround?" I'm like, "Yeah, and you have the decline couch." I'm like, "Yeah, what's the point of paying all that movie money if you just can watch it right in your home?"
Yeah. I only go to the movies if I go to a movie, it has to be pretty much within a week of it coming out, preferably opening night. But because I still like going to the movies, especially when there's an audience. Going into an empty theater, then I'd rather watch it on my TV at home. But an audience can really make a film fun. When there's audience reaction, when the audience cheers, like when we saw Avengers Endgame at the end, where everybody flipped out, when everybody kind of came back, when Doctor Strange does the thing and everybody comes out and everybody's there, when Spider-Man came back, everybody went nuts. So again, I think, or you're watching a funny movie where there's laughter and applause and stuff like that, I think it makes a difference in terms of your movie experience. But again, that typically takes place within the first week of it coming out. Then everything just kind of drops down after that. So I still like that, having that experience of going in. I even like it at the end when people, if it's a good movie and people clap and applaud at the end. I like going there and experiencing that also, if you've been in a good movie. So for those reasons, I would still go to the theater, but
I want to highlight the Queen's comment here because she has a good point there. Marvel and DC always has something towards the end after the trailer. I mean, after the credits, it was a little clip about, that's the next movie's coming around the corner. They give you a little teaser also. So I did like that. When I first heard about it, like, no way. I had to sit back and I'm like, holy shit, they were right. And like, I actually think that's one thing Marvel did really well. Marvel started that and DC copied after them, of course.
Right. But even now you have choice, because again, the updates on the plot of the movie takes place almost instantly the time it comes out. So you can, like, there are times I'll literally look at my phone and look at any teasers or whatever in the post credits, any after post credit scenes. It's almost like, no, there's no post credits, then boom, I jet out. But before, you would sit there and wait and hope that there would be some kind of post credit scene. You weren't sure if it was there or not, but I think everybody got hip to it now, so they know if something's coming up and say, okay, I'll stick around to watch this. Or sometimes they'll give you two post credits that
was one usually right after the short credits, with Avengers, like, for example. Then they have a bigger one right after the credits. I remember which one was that, Captain America one. That was the most disappointing one because they had all this, post-credit ones, and it goes, Captain America will return in Avengers. I'm like, that's it? I literally said,
there was no
minutes just for this.
Yeah.
And
they get you though, but I think people are more hip to the game now, and to see if it's worth staying. So usually nowadays, if people are staying back, then I stay back, because my thing is I'm guessing that people are kind of hip to it as to, there's something here worth staying for. But if people are like mass exiting out the thing, I was like, there's probably nothing here for me to watch.
Yeah. So, but how How about you hit your final thoughts to David gets back because I know he has
Yeah.
some.
So again, Johnny Quest. I would love to see it come back. I would love to see it. But again, keep the story. The only thing I said, update. Some of your interpretations or perceptions of different people, especially people of color. So I think it does have to modernize a little bit in terms of its portrayal of certain peoples around the world. That would be my only change to it. But it's a very realistic series. I think it has a lot of staying power even today. If you go back and watch the original 60s series, I think, anybody, because I thought I saw Marcus in here earlier. He was asking about it. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you can look those up on YouTube or whatever, but I'm sure it's worth spending your time checking out a few. And I think you'll enjoy it because, again, I think the audience that they played it for wasn't just kids, so it's not a kids' cartoon. I think it was a cartoon for everybody. And for that reason why I think it still holds a lot of weight with people. Now, unfortunately, on the movie end, from what I read before I jumped on, they've tried several times to do a live action. They just haven't been able to put it together, and then right now there's no plans to create a live action version of the of the show. So people are gonna have to wait on that more. But the original series is worth checking out. So that's all I gotta say.
Ladies and gentlemen, my final thought on this thing, I'll be real honest with you guys. I do wish to make a reboot on Johnny Quest for this generation, for this genre. But I believe they can do it better than the last two reboots. But maybe have a team of great writers who can not just making this one season, but if you can get out 3 seasons of Johnny Quest at least, give it a very compelling, great storyline, have us hooked onto it. Because Johnny Quest was one of those iconic cartoons, last anime, that it was very intriguing. It was like you look at you watch the next episode, like, what's gonna happen next? What will happen? What will happen? What will happen? Then later on you start having your own questions. What's the origin of Neji? What the origin of Dr. Quest? What how he came about? Like there was questions that pop up your mind while watching, like there's more to that we need to know. And I'm hoping they can do it justice. Like the or the other reboot was, I don't know, either they dropped it or they missed it, I don't know. But I believe it's possible they could do another reboot. If we're gonna do it though, please let's do it justice. Let it be that wow factor, bring all the old school Johnny Quest fan back, but like, yes, this how it's meant to feel, this how it's meant to look. That's what I'm hoping for, to be honest with you guys. I don't know about you, but leave your comment on this show. Let us know what you think about Johnny Quest, and maybe it's about time they make another reboot because they did one in 1986 and they did another one in 1996. And since then, there haven't been no reboot again after that. So you think it's about time to do another reboot, or let it rest? Like you gotta make the comment. That's my final thought.
All right, thanks, guys. I would like to see Johnny Quest come back. To be honest with you guys, I think it'd be a good, Burley. I I think it'd be a good show with the world we're living now. But let's go over a quick schedule update and let's get the heck out of here. So tomorrow, open paddle in the gray area. We're gonna bullshit a little bit. Hopefully, you guys join us. Now hopefully, I mean you will join us, right? Except that Wednesday, the anime unlocked. David, do you want to take over on that one?
This Wednesday, we'll be talking about one of the hottest anime that came out this year so far, which have a huge following and fan base, called Solo Leveling. We're doing season 1 of the franchise, Solo Leveling. So this Wednesday, I hope my partner, my co-host, Wally is up to speed because I'm really beyond up to speed. There's a lot of digesting, a lot of dissecting on doing this show. So I'm looking forward to see people come out and give their own opinion about Solo Leveling. All right?
Nice. And on Thursday, we're gonna be speaking about be the best version of yourself. So that is going to be a very interesting conversation, and that is a topic I did a while back on Motivation Monday. So we're swinging back to that again one more time because I think this is something we need to talk about definitely in 2025. Except that, David, anything else?
If you're gonna be yourself, don't be a thought.
Paul, Mr. President, anything on your
I'm
side?
good. See you
Guys,
guys tomorrow night.
as always, this was a Spartan Execute Network. I am Ghost Spara. He is Little Groot. He is Mr. President. Stay fresh, stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Peace.